Because everything in coaching is personal. It's all business, but it's all personal at the same time.
Yeah.
Big thing as a coach is get a full meaning across in as little words as possible. Every player can benefit from dropping their ego, because like I had a recruit in my office. All I did was talk about mentality. That you're going to come in, you're going to expect to play, and you're going to expect this, you're going to expect this, and it's like you have to throw all those expectations out the window. You two take top half of JUCOs, and like they can they're competing at a higher level than, at least in my experience, many of the D3s. I mean, the brain tumor, the surgery stuff, that had been growing in my head for several years.
That's something that could have ended your life.
Especially like in my senior year of high school is when I first noticed it. Like I was losing my vision little by little. I was losing my balance. When I would get really dizzy, I was like, walking into walls and walls. Like you turn around a corner and you think you passed the corner, and like I would bump into walls all the time.
How was it closing that chapter of your life as a player? Well, this coach is the same age as me or younger. How difficult has that been?
Dude, it's extremely difficult.
Eli, you didn't continue playing even though you wanted to. Was that the case, or did you have to stop?
I told myself I was done with soccer forever. I hated soccer, like this and that. I was like, all right, I'm done. Let's move on to the next part of my life.
There are a lot of people listening, kids who want to play at a higher level. They are coaches listening, they are directors. Anyone involved in sports is going to tune in to listen to your experience, potentially. My question is, why should they listen to you?
I've proven the process, and I've proven how to get back from rock bottom to get to where I am now.
For the next hour and a half, hopefully just an hour, we're going to dive in and reflect on you and your career, playing, coaching, and anything else that you've done that has helped you to where you are today. There are a lot of people listening, not preferably, but ideally kids who want to play at a higher level in any sport. It doesn't have to be soccer. They are coaches listening, they are directors. Anyone a fanatic of sports and involved in sports is going to tune in to listen to your experience, potentially. My question is, what is a reason that you think they're coming to here to listen, they're tuning in to listen to you? Why should they listen to you?
That's a great question. I would probably say because I've proven the process. I've been through the fire in a way, and I've proven how to get back from rock bottom to get to where I am now. So, that process, what it takes, like I've been through that. Like I have some of that evidence in a way.
And we sit here today, you as a coach, but your coaching career, to most people, would have seemed would have come on to you a bit earlier than most coaches. Those who would have played before. You played only not too long ago, but now you're a coach.
Yeah.
Full time. Before I go into detail, how does that resonate with you as I speak it into this room?
I mean, there's nothing makes me happier, to be honest. I'm glad I found it so young. The ability to, the life lessons and the joy it brings to every part of my life. Like, I honestly, I wish I could have started sooner.
Really?
Yeah, like obviously as a player, you love to play and you love that atmosphere. But once you find, what you believe is your calling, like that's all that matters to you in life. Yeah. So the simple answer is I wish I could have started earlier.
Now Eli, because we know the stress that it took. I hope it didn't cause you any stress that it took to get you here today to speak with me, and a little bit of background of how I managed to get in contact with you. You used to coach me.
Yeah.
And that was not too long. That was only last year, for the spring. You're 23, and I'm 21.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think one of my biggest questions, and I want to ask you this first. What is it like coaching I wouldn't say kids, coaching players that are close to your age, the same age as you, or sometimes even older? That's something that I haven't asked you yet, because I was your player. I called you coach. And for me, I saw it as, okay, he's coaching, right? I like what he's doing. I liked him. I've heard good things about him as a player. And he's coaching here with me and my teammates. I give him my most respect. Definitely. However, I know it's difficult. It is difficult with some other players that may not understand or want to be in that type of environment where they feel as though, well, this coach is the same age as me or younger. How difficult has that been?
Dude, it's extremely difficult. No, it's extremely difficult because, and I don't blame players for it either, because I know very well that if I was put in that situation as a player, I would have fully taken advantage of that coach and fully and not acted in the right way as a player, for sure. But a lot of it is skills, like, building the skill set to manage players of like that are older or your same age is not necessarily a skill I'll need in a few years, I don't think. I mean, by the time you're 30, 35, I mean, you're kind of hitting that point. Yeah. But it's a skill set within its own. And so, like, I mean, first of all, it's scary. Like, honestly, it's extremely terrifying as a coach, because, you're dealing, especially like at this age, players are mature, they have a sense of life, and they have a lot riding on themselves. Yeah. Like, especially at this JUCO level, like, this is the end all be all. Like, JUCO is like the lowest ring. Like, you got to work you're grinding for you get to that next spot. And like, for me, like in your situation, to get a little bit of where like my head was at, like I knew Keenan. I knew he was a successful coach. Him and I had like, I'd known him since I was like 17 in a way. I knew the success that you guys had, and I was 22 when I got hired. I had volunteer assistant coach before, but so when I came in, I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, I had sleepless nights where I'm like, I'm gonna walk in and these guys are like, who is this guy? And I think that's very valid. It was just like, so it's how do I handle that? How do I try to learn as much as I can? I got to be close with them, but I also have to be respectful, hold my ground, make sure they respect me. So yeah, no, it's really just, at the end, it's terrifying, but I just gotta do my best to build that skill set and build that relationship, so that way the player respects me, but the player also knows I respect them, and I understand the situation that they're in too, because it's not easy for a player to have to navigate that as well.
Yeah. And this is a busy time for you. Well, every month that soccer is in the play, involved in anything, is a busy month.
Absolutely, yeah.
However, this specific month, with regards to recruiting, and then that's probably one of the biggest areas within coaching, especially in the collegiate level. Mm-hmm. This is a busy time for you. What does that look like on a day-to-day basis?
It's just your life. Like, honestly, it's just, I actually just sent my assistant, Jose Hernandez, a quote the other day. I don't remember who the quote was from. I'm gonna botch it. But it was something to the effect of, I don't care if my players think of me as their life, but my players are my life. And that's kind of like whether every coach truly feels that or not. In terms of time, it is. Like, you wake up in the morning and the first thing you do is you have phone messages for work, for recruiting, players asking questions, other coaches, and throughout the day, I mean, your phone's always accessible. I mean, you're checking emails every single day. You're planning your next training session. Every night before bed, you're thinking about your next training session. What are you going to do? You're thinking about your next game. What needs to be done before then? What's the progression cycle? And then, you're talking about recruiting. I mean, how much time you got to spend on calls, keeping track, finding the right players. Like, it's literally never ending. I mean, I would say, like, a lot of the time, you're working 12. You're on the clock every second of the day. Yeah. So like, how many hours you put in doesn't necessarily matter, because at any second you can get a call or a text that you have to answer that. So yeah, it's just it's never ending. It never stops.
Eli, we're gonna go into that a lot more. I'm sure based off the you have a lot of experience so far, and you're only 23 now. But here's the thing: I want to be able to know who you were before coaching.
Yeah.
Before you stepped into those roles, the difficult positions.
Yeah.
As an assistant coach, as a head coach, individual sessions, running facilities with Villarreal.
Mm-hmm.
Who's Eli?
I think that's a question I struggle with. So like, I would say the biggest thing to me is two things.
Mm-hmm.
He's resilient and he's disciplined.
Okay.
I mean, those two things are the foundation of who I am at the end of the day. There's a lot of other things you can talk about, my hobbies, you can talk about the things I enjoy, the work I do, my relationships with people, but resilience and discipline are extremely important in my life.
Yeah. Was that always the case?
No, definitely not. Always to an extent, and always I knew of those two, mental properties, but you don't, when you're not mentally in the right place, I think it's hard to have those two things. Growing up, I went through a lot of my own mental struggles of figuring out who I was, and on the other side, I realized that those two topics were who I would be for the rest of my life.
Yeah. And a big part of your life, it goes without saying, is soccer.
Yes.
And we both play soccer. You coach soccer as a profession. I've coached just for helping, maybe making some money to help with certain things personally. But you do it as a profession. Before that, where did it begin in this sport, this love, this paradigm of playing a game called soccer? Where did it begin for you as a player?
Yeah. All my siblings played other sports. They were very good at football, basketball, baseball. My siblings were very good at their sports at their time. I had 3 older brothers that I was the 4th brother, and so I was the one that always trying to catch up in sports, and then soccer was just the one that I felt I was the best at, and so I kind of stuck with it as I went through, and then I think the real answer is the mentors that were involved in soccer. There was people that impacted my life, coaches and other parents and people within the soccer community that really impacted my life, and that made me love the sport more and grow more attached to the sport, and it just became more dedicated and more passionate every day. When a coach you really connect with on an emotional and deep level at a young age, you start to listen, and once you realize that his words are making an impact on you and your life in a positive way, that they're telling the truth, now you start to build that relationship, and now it just keeps building and building, and now you're way better off, and you have the love because you've seen the process work. And I feel like that's a lot with kids, it's a disbelief that the process will work. And building connections with kids is really important for that, and that happened with me with a few mentors in my life for sure.
As a player.
Yeah.
As a player, Eli, where did it begin? You playing? What age?
Everybody's playing at 3 or 4 years old in the YMCA, doing that kind of stuff. I got playing some of the competitive teams as age 7, 8, 9. I was an overweight kid. I was not very athletic. I was always intelligent, and so I was always the bottom of the bench kid. I was getting the least minutes, but it was something I enjoyed, and I was told if I put in the hard work, it would pay off. So I put in the hard work, and then eventually I got to a point where I got a coach, Brett Rosenberg, that his entire philosophy in soccer was hard work and intelligence. And those are the two things I had. So all of a sudden, you saw me and that philosophy and his style of play skyrocket to the top of the age group, as one of those guys. And that just propelled me even more as a player. And I just continued on that pathway as those same coaches, that same philosophy. As long as I was fit in those styles and philosophy, I was always going to thrive.
And there were times that you didn't fit.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say more in high school.
You know why I ask that is because there's football is so dynamic in how it's played, different ways of playing the game, different opinions, especially certain players' opinions on other players may be different than what other players may see in a particular player.
Absolutely, yeah.
Coaches may have a different opinion on players. It's a game that, because of how how dynamic it is, again, there's different perspectives, you know, and if you fit these categories for this particular coach, then you'll play. There's no reason you shouldn't. If you're fit, you're there, you show up on time, you should play. If you have these two characteristics, what you had. Was there a time where you didn't fit, and what did that look like?
I mean, in high school, you can say, when I was in high school, you could say to a degree, because the game wasn't as intelligent per se, like wasn't as organized. But for sure in college, you know, I didn't adjust that well, and to like the style at Bellevue. I was just one of the hardest workers on the pitch. I mean, besides that, like, you know, I didn't have the athleticism. I didn't have as much of the quick problem solving. I was more of like, I knew how to play tactically. I knew if my teammates were around me in this way, I knew I could beat a team in a certain way. But you know, if that one center mid wasn't in that spot where he had been the last 5 years, I did struggle. Which is one of the things I care about a lot now, is trying to coach kids and to be able to adapt to different philosophies and tactics. But that's definitely a hard part for me, is still as a coach. I have not done that well enough by any means. It's something I definitely struggle with, because I have my style of play, my philosophy, and it's hard to think that, like, even though I know any player I coach is going to be coached in different systems, different philosophies, and it's best for that player to be able to adapt to any. To me, that's one of the hardest things to coach in a player.
Someone who is
adaptable, and like the tool set. They have all the tools. Like, to me, have all the tools to play. If you have a giant tool set, how many tools can you put in a tool belt for this player to be able to succeed?
That's the most difficult part. If a player has the tools, not just having the tools, but they know they have the tools, they're equipped with the skills necessary to play, to continue playing the game. Is one thing to just play well and then the rest of the time have a couple inconsistencies. You're saying that a player that has the tools at this stage in your career has all the tools, is difficult to coach. That's what you're saying.
Sorry, I guess I'm saying, twist it. It's hard to give players tools, more tools. A lot of coaches specialize in specific tools. It's hard to take a player with 5 tools and, you know, have them leave you with 20. Yeah. Like that to me is like the bread and butter of coaching, giving them more tools.
Giving them more tools. I appreciate you saying that, because it brings a sense of honesty of what you want to work on as a coach. You know what I mean? And it gives a sense of transparency to coaches, to players, that towards players, that you're being transparent towards them into, okay, if you're at a certain level and you're playing well and you have these tools, then it's not just you. I find a lot of coaches may find it difficult to coach the best players at the highest level. And you hear all the time, it was either Jose Mourinho or Ancelotti talking about, I don't coach, I don't teach them how to play the game, I just manage the team. You know, I think it was actually Alex Ferguson, because he was saying that I can't teach Cristiano.
And that's Ancelotti. Ancelotti, Real. That's what he's all about.
You can't teach them how to play the game, because they're at the highest level, and they know how to play, how to kick the ball in certain ways, how to move the ball. But you can only manage the team. He said he can only manage the team what the players, their energies and what they like, and bring an environment that is cohesive. And then you can add to that with your philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm getting. That's what I'm understanding from what you're saying. Is that how you try to approach coaching?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. That's a huge aspect. Yeah, and then at these levels, you have the responsibility of giving more tools. You have so many more responsibilities in a way, because you need, if you truly care about a player's progression, and that's a big if, a big like kind of a wood chip that sticks in there, is like, there's a big difference if you truly care about a player's progression at the next level or at the next team. Like, that's a completely different way of coaching than trying to win games. Trying to win games now, you could use completely different coaching.
Really?
So yeah, it's and so yeah, that's definitely something I struggle with right now in terms of my career as well. Is like, do you really care about the player? How much can I care about the player and still focus on the performance? That's always a battle.
Definitely. But high school was at Lincoln East. You also played for the Academy Villarreal.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up, is an academy here in affiliate academy, isn't it, with Villarreal in Spain that moved here in Nebraska? Is that correct?
Yeah. They actually just went under last April, so they're not around anymore.
Really?
But they were around for about 6-7 years. So I played there most of my high school club ball, and then coached there for the last 2 years or so.
Yeah. And then as a captain, 3-time All-American, 3-time All-City selection, 3-time academic All-Conference. You smart, I guess.
Yeah. That was always an important aspect for me. Is the grades were above all, for sure.
Is it safe to say that you were that guy in high school?
Yeah, no, not. Think of the exact opposite. I went. I struggled with my older brothers. Them being the light of it. They were always in the light. I was just the socially awkward and the smart one behind the scenes. And I went to a Catholic school until high school. So through 8th grade, I was at a Catholic school with the same 30 kids, for 9 years. So when I went to high school, I stayed kind of in the shadows quite a bit. I stuck to myself for the most part. A lot of social things. And so, I just kind of, like my freshman year, that was one of those things where like I went to Glasgow in Scotland, and I trained or had like a train/tryout with the Rangers.
Really?
And I had to miss my high school season because of the high school rules. And so, that entire freshman year, and then most of your sophomore year, when people are asking, when they find out I'm a soccer player, like they all just think I'm terrible, because like I didn't play high school soccer, and like some of them knew me from club, but it's like club's a different game. And so that was, and if I said something like, hey, are you better than this player? I'd be like, yeah, I know I am. But then they think I'm egotistical and all this stuff. So I just learned to stay in the shadows. And then by the time those other years hit, I was scoring. I started on every game besides one through 3 years. And, I was scoring goals, assisting, leading the team, captaining the team, everything. And that was all on the field. And when I went back to school, I did my grades, I did my classes, stuck with my 3 or 4 friends, stayed in the shadows, just because that was kind of what I conditioned myself my first year or so.
So if that was your experience in high school, how did this move to Bellevue University come about?
Yeah, no, I actually, so my sophomore year, my sophomore year is like my second or third game of the season. I assisted 2 goals against Westside, which Westside is a good program history. I think they won on that year to win the state championship. But they had this player named Jack Finachero who scored 2 or all 3 of their goals to beat us. And so I remember walking away from like that game thinking like, dude, this Jack guy is freaking good, man. Like I thought I played really well in the midfield and so after the season ends, everything, he commits to Bellevue, and I'm sitting there at the time I'm thinking I'm a Division I player, I'm a Division II player. That's what you're thinking about. I'm like, why did this guy go to Bellevue? And so then by the time, within the next year, I start having more of an open mind, and I realize, oh, wow, like these other, what I thought were small programs are actually legit. And so like that kind of opened my eyes to open that lane of communication and start reaching out to Preston and some of those guys at Bellevue, getting the ID camps and things like that.
Is that the route you took? The route you took for Bellevue, going to reaching out?
Yeah. I emailed Mark. Had a little bit of chit chat. Came out to an ID camp. And then really just there kept communicating, and I think it was easy to see at the time he was coaching clubs, so I saw him a few times throughout the club year as well, and his assistants were all around. So and they already had me on their board when I messaged them, so I think that was just kind of the easy fit of this guy's on our board, he's messaging us, he's actively coming to camps. That's a very easy recruit for a coach. To have that player doing all the heavy lifting for him in a way, so it worked out really well.
Let's debunk the idea or any myths involved with ID camps, because you may have not had an ID camp yourself for Southeast College, but you went to ID camp. You're a coach now. You speak to coaches who have ID camps. Let's talk about ID camps, because first of all, big question: should a player attend an ID camp?
Yes, with the right mindset.
What mindset?
So you have to be active in every part. You showing up on a field and playing is going to do nothing for a coach. But you showing up to a field and playing and introducing yourself to coaches and having conversations and showing up early, getting extra work 5 minutes in before you start, getting extra work in maybe with a partner, helping clean up, being active in everything. Like that all says way more than anybody's on a field. If I ever go to an ID camp, there's so many players there. Obviously it's really easy / the fun part to pick out the kids that are good. The kids that you might want to recruit. And then the rest of the time, the next 3 or 4 hours, once I've already identified those kids, now I'm watching all their habits. How do they talk to when the coach is talking? How do they stand? How are they listening? How are they communicating with their teammates? What are they picking up? Are they coming over and trying to speak with me and have a mature conversation? That's all the stuff that becomes way more important. And then by the end of the camp, at least in my experience, I have one player, mostly zero that didn't pass all his tests, or maybe one player that that really mixed. And that's what I've heard from a lot of coaches, that you have to have, if you're going to pay and show up and play, that's not going to do you any good. You got to show that you're mature, show that you want it, show that you have the mindset and the mentality of somebody who's going to make you do well at that level. Yeah.
You took that route for you, and you made it on the roster at Bellevue. 2021 or 2020?
That would have been 2019.
2019.
Yeah, would have been my first season.
2019, first season. I'm gonna really mess up the stats now, but played 2019, played 2020, but that was COVID year, right?
Yeah.
So 2021.
Yeah, I left in August of 21. So I never really played that much at Bellevue, to be honest. Even my freshman year, I think I only started one game. I maybe played in 3-4 others. Looking back, that was also in terms of the brain tumor, the surgery stuff. That had been growing in my head for several years, and so at that time, I'm looking back, looking at the science of it, that whole freshman year. I had a tumor in my head and I didn't know. So that looking back, I believe that plays effect on it. Yeah. But I like that. Otherwise, our freshman year I think was one of the worst in recent history. I didn't play that much. Sophomore COVID year, junior year, I think I left after the last preseason game.
Eli, you did that. What you went through, what you just mentioned. You kind of skimmed over it as though it just didn't happen, right?
It's a lot to unpack there for sure.
That's something that I wanted to speak to you about, because that's not an ACL tear. That's not a Achilles rupture. That's not a hamstring injury. That's something that could have ended your life simple there, and then it affected your family as well. You said that you didn't know it was growing, but it was in your freshman year. And only until your sophomore year is when you figured out, well, look, I'm in trouble here.
Yeah, yeah.
What was that like?
Yeah, so basically, like, I had noticed for an extended period of time, especially like in my senior year of high school is when I first noticed it. Like started noticing the stuff. I was losing my vision little by little. I was losing my balance when I was on the field. And, like you do, like I used to do Maradona turns all the time. That was one of my favorite. Every time I would get really dizzy all of a sudden, and like, a blurred vision. I was like, walking into walls like you turn around a corner and you think you passed the corner, and like I'd bump into walls all the time. My neck started, like hanging down, and people like were like, dude, like, what are you doing? And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I'm just like, I felt like I was standing up straight. So those symptoms had like slowly developed over a long period of time, random throwing up at times. A large part of me thought it was my habits in life. Thought that was playing a part, but also I'd become so accustomed to it that like I didn't tell anybody, I didn't burden anybody. Like it was just one of those things that I just ignored and went through. So like my August of my sophomore year, I'm sitting down for my birthday dinner with my family in a restaurant, and I'm like, man, I can't read this menu. And they're like, what? Like, I can't read the menu. Like, I'm losing my vision. It's a turn this whole thing. Like, you need to get glasses, yada, yada, yada. Come around to, say, 2 months later in October, I'm sitting in class, and I can't read my laptop that's right in front of me. Like, not like blurry vision, but like I can't see anything.
You can't see anything?
Yeah, and so I'm like, man, I got to pull the trigger. I got to go to the eye doctor.
It's blank.
It's like I could see a lot of colors. And I was just going, so imagine like playing soccer for 2 months, college for a top 10 program in the nation, and like you can't really see much,
Yeah.
So I went to the eye doctor, and within 5 minutes, he's like, dude, you gotta go to the emergency room. I'm like, what's going on? I go, they run a bunch of tests. It's all scary stuff. They tell me they'll send me the results later. And they're basically like, yeah, you gotta come in, and you gotta have brain surgery. Like you have a tumor.
On the flight, like I'm not on the flight, the day, but when you realized you couldn't see anything, they said you need to have brain surgery now.
No, they said I got to go to the emergency room to get tests done. And then I had to wait about a day or two. And then once they had the results, they called me and like, we got to get you admitted to the hospital and set up to have the surgery. So then, it turns into that whole complication where you're having 4, 6, 8 hour scans done. They're trying to figure out, the doctor's trying to figure out, hey, well, you have a tumor in your left cerebellum. It's ginormous. I had no idea how you didn't know over the last several years. Like they're talking about, it's like one of the biggest they've ever seen. It's so basically like the science behind it is this thing got so big that there's all these passages in your brain that like fluids constantly moving in and out of. And this thing had gotten so big, it blocked up all those passageways. So my eyes and different parts of my brain were swelling because there's all this fluid. So like my optic nerves are like permanently damaged from swelling because it was blocking my vision because you have all this fluid stuff because the tumor was so big. Yeah. So if random, like, the eyesight, like that's why like we were able to find out, then the doctor's like, we're trying to figure out where to have the surgery properly, how to remove it out. Cause, there's the chances of death, of mental incapacity, retardation, all that kind of things. It's the middle of COVID, so I'm getting COVID tested 3 times a day.
Yeah.
There's 100 different problems I could go down. Then it's really got the surgery. You're in ICU for a week, got all the stuff going into your head, and you're chilling for a week doing nothing and just recovering.
How long was the surgery? Do you know?
It was like 8 hours or something like that. So I got like a big metal plate back there where my skull was and all that good stuff. Yeah. So then it's getting back. It's still COVID, when you get done.
But it was a week.
Gained about 15 pounds.
You gained weight.
Yeah, because I had to be put on a certain steroid to get the swelling down. So I gained a bunch of weight. couldn't walk for 2 weeks. So like, it's getting the legs back moving again, trying to walk on your own. Obviously bad headaches, all that kind of stuff, because your skull was just operated on.
Yeah. Like migraines?
Yeah. So yeah.
Wow. How are your parents in this whole thing?
They were very active and very supportive. They were there as much as possible, and
supportive or like scared?
I mean, they were scared, but like like my family, it was very much there. Like was through every step of the way. There almost at all times when they could be, at least with visiting hours. I had family that paid my rent while I was out of it, and so
because you're in college,
yeah. So yeah, they had to pay my electric bill and rent and everything while I was there.
Yeah. You're living off campus.
Yeah.
And it would have been difficult to be able to. Well, you can't walk for the first 2 weeks.
yeah, and you're by yourself.
Yeah,
Well, at the time I had a girlfriend that I was living with, but it's similar. So yeah, it's yeah, and so basically, I mean, after that, you're dealing with all the life, all the stuff that brings you upon. They're like, you can't play soccer for at least 9 months, if ever again. You're not supposed to work for at least 3 months. They're putting all these limitations on me, type of thing. I was not happy about that. School, I think they wanted me to take 6 months off. But basically right before the surgery, I did, I did like, probably like 20 weeks worth of classes in like 48 hours. So that way I wasn't behind on my classes. And then so that surgery was done. I was back in like November, and I started classes again in January, and just, got right back on it. Because what else was I gonna do? Sit down in an apartment and do nothing, or go right back at it. So yeah, I started working in December again. I got back on the pitch by March, which was like
March the following year.
No, yeah. So like November is when I got released. So December, January, February, March, like 4 months. I was back on the pitch playing. Yeah, I had to go in and fight for that, with the doctors and everything, and they reluctantly cleared me.
Because they said 9 months.
Yeah.
That's not 9 months.
Yeah, so yeah, I got back in shape and everything to go do that, and I basically got my life as normal as possible in like 4 or 5 months.
But how much did it change?
My life changed everything. It really did, because like I quickly mentioned with the classes, like I did like those 20 weeks worth of classes in 48 hours, like the day before my surgery. So like, like you're in that mind, that's the biggest one I probably look back on. You're at a point where like, hey, tomorrow or 2 days, I'm going to go into surgery. There's a chance of death. There's a chance of like mental incapacitation. You don't know what you're going to be like. There's a chance that, like your left arm just randomly doesn't work, and they don't know how. And so I'm sitting there and I do all my classwork because I don't want to fall behind. I want to graduate. I want to graduate early. So that kind of like fixed something in my mind, that like no matter what is coming, like I got to do as much as I can for myself now to set me up for the future. So like that really, I came out, I worked extremely hard physically to get myself up, mentally, and that's really who I am today, just very mentally resilient and disciplined, because I realized what I could do at my lowest part, one of my lowest moments in my life. I knew what I could accomplish and what I could push my mind to do. So now it's like, I can do anything,
Mm-hmm.
like that, like that's really like how I feel. Like I can do anything I set my mind to, because like I already did that.
You faced death.
Yeah. Like, yeah, in a way, like it's, yeah. I mean, other people obviously have faced it closer, but like, to me, like, that's something that you can definitely tell myself to get to help in a situation.
But you ended up getting back on track as much as you can, or much as you could, but it wasn't the same.
No, I wasn't the same person. There's also a time where I struggled with, my girlfriend at the time. We broke up pretty soon after my surgery. I struggled with I was on a lot of drugs, a lot of oxycodone and other things like that. I was drinking a lot. Like those types of things, you start building mistakes over and over and over. And then at some point you got to say, all right, you got to stop making mistakes. And how can I just grow? So I did spend quite a while making a lot of mistakes. socially and personally. And so, that sucks in a way. There's probably a lot of relationships I could have with people if I hadn't made those mistakes. But the best thing I can do it now is learn as much from those mistakes as possible to not repeat them.
Eli, you didn't continue playing even though you wanted to. Was that the case, or did you have to stop?
No. I trained and I played, and then come August, I didn't play that much in preseason. I still wasn't, my body wasn't ready yet.
For your junior year.
But in my head, I expected, I was in the moment, like, why am I not back yet? Why am I not like ready to go? So I'm like, if I'm not like playing, if I'm not back to who I am, then I'm just gonna go do something else with my life, was really my mentality. Even though looking back now, I didn't give myself near enough time. So yeah, I just got to a point in August where I was just like, I gotta make a decision with my life. Is this something I want to keep waiting on, or should I move on to the next step? And so I talked with a lot of people and finally figured it out, and I decided to leave Bellevue. I moved back to Lincoln with some of my old friends in a house, and I became a manager at a Subway. And I did that. That was like kind of my next move. I did school online, and I just completely relocated everything. I told myself I was done with soccer forever. I hated soccer, like this and that. I was like, all right, I'm done. Let's move on to the next part of my life. It was really my mindset leaving Bellevue.
How was it closing that chapter of your life as a player?
It was difficult. It was really difficult. I was very emotional. I cried quite a bit. Even on the field with my teammates, my last practice, or I guess not even my last practice, we did like our warm-up jog. We're stretching in a circle, just players around. I got up in front of the guys, told them how much they meant to me throughout this process, and that I was going to be leaving. I was crying. I'm watering now. My eyes are watering now thinking about it. That was your team's a huge part of your life and a huge part of what you can become. So
yeah, were some of those your boys?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they still are. I lived with several of them at certain points too, and for sure. Yeah, those were my guys, and so I almost felt dirty in a way of like saying I had to leave them, because I felt selfish that I was doing it for my own life, even though I felt like I could still stay and still help them as much as possible, still be a part of their life in a way. I don't know if that's egotistical or not, but I felt like I was letting them down in a way, not pushing through.
You thought of them before you thought about yourself. Technically, you made decisions for you, but then you thought of them at the same time. That shows a level of selflessness.
Yeah.
To an extent.
Yeah, in a way, yeah.
To be selfless. Why did you think of your teammates and your boys before, at the same time of making a decision that probably was the best for you at the time, that you thought was gonna benefit your life, but you still thought of the ones that mean most to you? Why was that? Why did you make that decision?
I guess I don't really know. I think that's just something that I probably learned. I made a lot of decisions for myself, and those mistakes that I was talking about earlier. Mm-hmm. And I realized, part of making those mistakes were a lot of that mistakes were done by individual thinking, and really realizing that the people in my life that truly supported me, like those are the people that I cared about. They dropped everything to support me. Mm-hmm. And so that taught me a lot about who people are. When they drop everything to support me, it's like, all right, now I got to do the same for you at all times. Like that, for the rest of their lives, I got to be that person.
Now you were on to the next chapter.
Yeah.
Did you know what that looked like at the time?
Oh, no. I thought I was going to be off in the business world doing stuff. I was working at Subway. I thought if you asked me in that junior year of college, I was never going to go back to soccer.
Really?
Yeah.
But the job at Subway and then working in business, this was something that you just needed to do, or was it just something that you just fell back on?
I needed that break. But also being a manager of a restaurant at 20 years old is still, a lot. It's still a step, it's still something I could focus on. So that was that was a part. I definitely enjoyed that time to just focus on something else. But it also taught me a lot about leadership and about coaching, and about leading a team. Like, 'cause at that time I had plenty of employees that were older than me, and some that were younger. But I quickly realized that I could lead a team pretty effectively, and that people really enjoyed working for me.
How old were you at the time?
I would have been 20.
You're 20 and managing a Subway.
Yeah. So
You had employees older than you.
Yeah. So yeah, I would. Yeah, that was. It's my family's been doing that for years, so that was kind of in my blood. But yeah, that was, and that was something that it taught me a lot about leadership, and I still have really good connections with some of those employees that I had, especially like the kids that were high schoolers at the time. I still see them around town, and we have great conversations still of like, and they talk about like the impact I made on them, and that's really crazy to hear of like, man, I was a 20-year-old, Subway manager.
I'm hearing this now. I'm like, first of all, how'd you get the job? Because they're hiring a 20-year-old.
Oh, that's the cheat code. Is my family owns several Subways in Lincoln. Yeah. So I'd worked there for 3 years in high school. Yeah. That was always my mom was the director of all the employees, and so she was the leader, involved with all the personnel and all the managers and everything. So, and she trusted me of not she wouldn't have done the same, I don't think, for everybody, but we have a good relationship. We have a great relationship, and we have great conversations. And so she trusted me to come in and do a good job. And I think that was the number one thing, is as long as I put my 100% in, that she was going to be happy. So I had to respect that.
I'm interested now, managing a Subway. Usually I ask this question about a player or someone in business, someone in directing facilities, whatever, or athletic director. What is a busy day like for you, a 20-year-old managing a Subway?
Hey, what was a typical day like?
Yeah, managing any day-to-day tasks.
So I mean, at the time I also got really heavy into bodybuilding. Okay. It was like I had my diet planned out. I'd show up in the morning and I would open the store. I show up at, I think, 8:45, 9 a.m., spend the first hour opening the store. I'm keeping track of my diet. I'm trying to get a little protein in, and then depending on the day, like if it's a regular weekday, it's pretty boring. I'll have a few employees come in from 10 to 2 or 3 o'clock, and they're just there for a few hours running the store with me. They all leave, and I make sure everything's prepped for the night staff. And then I got to be on call for the night staff at night, make sure everything's getting taken care of properly. They're doing everything they need to do for the next morning. It really wasn't, it's like, a typical 8-hour day. I leave, go hit the gym, work on, I did a lot of reading, a lot of philosophical reading back then. And just more of that stuff. So it was really, as long as I did as much as I could in that 8 hours, there's not very many problems outside. And that was a very valuable lesson for me. If at the beginning, if I wasn't putting 100% in, and there's always slips and cracks, I started to realize that then leaked in elsewhere into the rest of the day. And now I'd have more problems to come fix because maybe something's out of stock that I should have seen. An employee is pissed off about something that wasn't done. It could be anything. But if I left my store at 100%, as good as I could, I knew that night would be kind of more off for me. And I definitely take that into coaching in my life now. It's a very valuable lesson of when you're on the job, do it 100%.
Yeah. And from what I'm gathering from the early stages of your career playing, and then moving into college, and then transitioning into being a manager at Subway, you were tested.
Yeah.
You were tested, and I want to know, did it feel like you were being tested? And before you answer, the reason why I'm asking that is because sometimes I feel like, or I'm told by some of my teammates, that they're being tested. And I think about what they're saying is that when they're faced with a challenge, they don't see it. And for me also, I may not see it as a challenge or a reason why this is happening to me or what is going on. I'm thinking of or how bad it is. I think they're thinking, and we're discussing of, this is testing me. And when I realized and I asked myself that question, I started to give myself a bit of credit that I'm maturing. I gave myself credit to say I'm maturing. I'm being tested.
Yeah.
Did it feel like you were being tested? Did you ask yourself, am I being tested right now?
Like you start to kind of feel like that knowledge in your own head, like, hey, like this is a struggle point for me that I got to conquer.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I always saw it a different way in a sense of like that competition instinct in me, like that in terms of that test. It's like, I got to give it my all, and I'm not going to fail.
Yeah.
And if I do fail, then got to do it again. So like, I mean, in a way, yes, but it was just like, there's no chance at failing because I'm going to learn from, even if I do fail, I'm going to learn from it and come back better. So just having that mindset, that kind of that growth mindset. And, I had coaches from a young age in soccer that instilled in me failure is the best teacher. That so even like your mistakes, like you give it 100%. If you fail, then like you just go again. Yeah. Like, because now you learned something. Exactly. So I guess I didn't really stop to think about it too much in that sense.
But I guess it brings us into a very perfect way to transition into the coveted quick fire questions. We'll do at least like maybe 10. These are very, very, and I like these questions. I didn't create most of them. I asked coaches and players of what would really test them, what question would really test them.
Okay.
And some have been a bit dangerous. So we'll see how you go. What's one regret you have from your playing days?
The ego, being egotistical.
Really?
Yeah. I think almost every player can benefit from dropping their ego, because the more ego you drop, the harder you're going to work, and the more your teammates are going to respect you.
And did you figure that out, or are you just reflecting on it now?
Reflecting back, you realize how big of a head I had at one point, and that definitely affected my own development and my relationship with teammates.
Yeah, that's interesting. Have you ever faked an injury?
No, I wouldn't say faked. Maybe let it linger too long, and maybe like probably could have played on it, type of thing at certain points at the club level. But no, not faked.
Eli, you're now a coach. Have you ever benched a player for personal reasons?
That's a difficult one. Because everything in coaching is personal. Everything in the game, it's all business, but it's all personal at the same time. Yeah. It's a very hard line to walk. Nothing someone's done personally to me, but for somebody maybe not having my personal preferences in a player. Yes.
You're good. Would you rather have a team full of superstars who show disrespect to you and your coaching staff, but win titles every season? Or have a group of average players who you experience no success with, but are willing to learn and are invested in your philosophy? Now, hold on. I said the probably not the easiest answer, the easiest option. I said the option that sounds good last. You know what I mean? But think about the first option, because now that I'm reading it, I'm like, well, look, you're winning or losing.
Yeah, and if you hear my recruiting calls, it's like second option is the sound good answer, but that's who I am to my core. You like to win, but you love to work every day. There's nothing I want more than to show up every single day with 20 guys that are there to work hard. That to me, like that's what the joy of the day is. Even if how good players are, like that at some point, like you just go up like, oh, these guys they're here again. Like that's not coaching. I'm just showing up and I'm hanging around a soccer field, and you're winning. And at some point, it's like, oh, how much coaching are you really doing? Yeah, I mean, I would love to win more, obviously, but nothing gets once you're doing 17-hour days for weeks in a row. Like there's not you don't want to get out of bed for those guys. You want to go out, you want to get out of bed and work at your fullest capacity for someone who's also there to work for themselves and for each other.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely go for that second option.
Favorite moment as a player?
Ooh. My favorite moment, again, a match
Could be anything.
could be anything.
Yeah.
Oh, that's hard. I would gotta say, I'm debating here. No, I would say in high school, our rivals were I played at Lincoln East, and our rivals were Lincoln Southwest. And a lot of my teammates transferred to their school because they were the better team, and they wanted to win. You know, we kind of building those super teams type of thing. Maybe that wasn't their only reason. I don't know every reason they had, but you know, that was kind of my perspective at the time.
Okay.
And so then we beat them my senior year of high school. We beat them in 1-0 and kind of, you know, took them off that ledge. And that, like, as a team, like, we thought we weren't going to win. But we went out there and we gave it our all. And so that's one of my favorite team moments is after that game.
Yeah.
And knowing that, like, with all those reasons behind it as a team, that we just did that, like, that was a fun way to kind of end your senior year.
That's good.
With that squad of guys, something I'll never forget.
Some of you guys, yeah, that's good. What's the worst coaching decision you've ever made so far?
There's a lot of them, man.
Completely transparent.
There's a lot of them. Worst one. Probably this year playing Iowa Western as my first match as a head college coach. You know, that's kind of a decision by me, but that was you know, that was very difficult for us to show up and play arguably the best program in the nation for JUCO at any JUCO level. And being a first year coach with almost all freshmen on the team, that didn't build the momentum at all. And you know, that was something that mentally that we struggled with for the entire season. My guys are still struggling with. We're still trying to conquer that. So that was a huge mistake on my part.
You put it on the roster, but you know, it's a team that, you know, it's still good to play, but maybe not first.
Yeah, maybe not first, and maybe with a different, because, you know, in my head, there's no point in playing a game if you're not gonna, if you don't have it, you don't believe you have a chance in winning.
Yeah.
So like, even in my head beforehand, like, I knew who they were, like, and everything, but like, I'm still like confident, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of know what the result is gonna be, but also like, you know, like, you believe that you can win. And you know, I didn't, like, I have my players ask now this spring, like, hey, actually, my French goalkeeper who started that game, we were talking about it last week while we were watching the game in the locker room. We were watching the Man U game, and he's like, Eli, before that game, like, you talked to me, and I really thought you thought we were gonna win. And he's like, did you really? He's like, did you really think that? Like we got destroyed. And I'm like, dude, I completely believed it. Like, so like that, you know, that doesn't help for the players are like, dude, this guy's crazy. Like, now we don't know where his radar is.
Oh man. Hey, you know, it's all good. It could be way worse though. A decision that it could be way worse. Because you're setting a team on there that you're gonna play. It's not a decision that's like a detriment of your team, you know, it just could be way worse.
Well, I mean, I guess it probably if you handled it correctly, but you know, as a barely 23-year-old head coach, I probably didn't handle it the best way afterwards. I probably didn't coach it the best way during. So, you know, there was a million lessons I learned from that game alone. So, you know, yeah, I mean, if you take a coach who's been coaching for 20 years and that happens to them, the rebound, the after effects for the rest of the season are going to be completely different than me after that game, unfortunately. But it is what it is.
If you could change one rule in soccer, what would it be?
Probably. Oh, I was actually talking about this the other day. There's two I'm trying to choose from. I would say free kicks. I would move it back further, move the wall back further.
Like further to the goal?
Further away from the ball.
Okay.
Because I don't feel like enough. I feel like free kicks are kind of obsolete in terms of direct free kicks these days.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, yeah, obviously there's still like the cross or whatever, but I feel like if we give them more space, there can be more creativity in front of the ball for more things to happen. But also, I feel like direct shots would be more common.
Yeah.
I don't know, like just trying to change it up a little bit.
Yeah. I didn't think about that, because you don't have to get it up and down depending on how far it is.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think about that. I usually, when I think about this, some of the questions that I ask, honestly I can't answer half the questions I ask.
Yeah.
But this question I think of, I would say, and from what I've heard, players would like to remove throw-ins.
Remove throw-ins?
Yeah, and just do kick-ins. So that's an easy one to maybe. What do you think?
I like the idea, but then it's just gonna be just corner kicks all over the field.
Like that's ball in the box.
That's the problem. Like that, I mean, that's the only problem with it. Yeah, if like you just like popped it in and played right away, yeah, awesome. But there's gonna be teams, especially in this area of the country, that's gonna be taking that corner. It could be 80 yards on the other side of the field, and they're taking that as a corner kick. Some kid that can hit a ball like no other, which would be interesting. But I would like to like the futsal version of that. Like playing like the quick play-ins would be definitely fun.
Yeah, for sure. I think also I was discussing with some of my other teammates, like if we change the dynamics of soccer. If we were saying if the US got their hands on soccer, on football before Europe or the other countries did, the other places did around the world, how would it look like? What would it look like? And we said, well, maybe the field would be smaller, the games would be shorter, more breaks, and less players on the field. So it's more of like a training session. You play like a half field or a 3/4 field, put the goal in, and then you play like that, more like a Kings Cup.
Yeah. There's a lot of those like little league, people talking about those leagues popping up and stuff, which I don't know. I think it would be fun.
You think so?
Like I think it's different, but I think it could be really good for the game.
Yeah, I think so. Very entertaining. There are some fans that don't want to watch 90 minutes. We want to watch it, but I understand some fans want to watch 90 minutes of.
All the different rules in there that just make it more entertaining. I think it could be really good for players too. Not everybody's built for an 11-man game. Some players are built for a 5v5 game, and that's like where they really thrive.
Yeah.
Or like all the different aspects, like with the cards coming in from the coaches and stuff that would be crazy fun. Like playing it more like chess in a way. I would love to definitely see more of that.
More rules, yeah. Imposter syndrome. You hear this phrase a lot, or term, these two words together, imposter syndrome. Has there ever been a moment where you question your fitness as a coach?
100%. So actually, that's a great that you brought that up. When I went to the coaches convention in January, in Chicago, and so one of the speakers was BJ Callahan, who took over the U.S. men's national team this last summer in the Gold Cup when Berhalter got fired. And he had never head coached. He had never head coached before, at any level above 16, 17 years old. And so he was, he gave a talk and did a whole session and everything in a conference room. And he mentioned the imposter feeling of how he felt when he took over that team, that he didn't feel like, he felt like he wasn't that guy. Mm-hmm. But you got to pretend to be that guy, whatever it is. He goes into it. And so I waited however long afterwards, and I went and talked to him, and I shook his hand and was like, man, how do you approach that? How do you do you just feel that? He's like, no, dude, as a coach, I feel that all the time. Really? You just that's just one thing. You got to be confident in yourself, and it's almost a good thing because it means you're self-reflective. But we're talking about a guy who's the head coach of in Nashville in the MLS right now. Yeah. He's been coaching in the U.S. system at the top U.S. men's national team. He was the assistant for years. As the temporary head coach, taught coach Division I for forever, and he's talking about having this imposter syndrome. So that's definitely something I felt. At Southeast, you know, being 22 and 23 and not feeling ready. But it's one of those things that you just gotta go in with the right mindset. Like I told people when I took the job that my goal is to mess up as much as possible because I'm going to learn the most by doing that.
You told them that?
Oh, I've told. No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't tell my players and stuff that, but like, I've told probably dozens of people. Like when they ask about the job, like, yeah, I can't wait to go in and fail. Yeah. That was my mentality with you, which kind of sucks in a way, but I learned so much in that spring with you and your guys, and just approach everything that has to do with the job and just put yourself out there and just fail as much as possible, and that kind of takes away the imposter syndrome in a way because you know you're going to fail. You know you have to do it at 100% work rate. Otherwise, all you learn is that, hey, I failed at 80%. But if you fail at 100%, now you know you can take a lesson away, you can reflect, and now you can change how you do things, how you operate. So just with that mindset, it kind of ticks away. But no, I still feel that imposter syndrome all the time.
When you were talking to BJ, when you ask a question that's so open-ended like that to someone that is already spoken so much already, it can be difficult for him to give you an answer that he may want to give you at that time. Because let's say I ask you a question, a very deep philosophical question on the pitch rather than here. You may not give me the answer like that you may want to give me because of the time, the environment at the time, and you don't feel it's appropriate. From what you're saying, he managed to answer your question as effectively and briefly as possible that give you so much value.
That's a coach. I mean, I think we kind of spoke about that a little bit before, we started filming. That's a big thing as a coach is, can you get a full meaning across in as little words as possible? So, in a 45, our conversation was probably 2 or 3 minutes, I guess. But how much he can get across and how much you can connect with somebody and get across is, so even walking away from that, like I learned a lot from just that conversation, like how much he could impact me in that little amount of time. Like that's what I want to achieve. I want to get to that. I want to get to that level as he did, because like you said, it's impressive. It's a skill, and it's an impressive skill for sure.
You want to get to the stage where you can coach in less words. How often are you coaching your coaching ability? If that makes sense. How often are you criticizing your ability to coach at the times that you're coaching? That's a difficult question.
So how much am I criticizing in the moment?
Yeah.
So you kind of learn. I mean, the easy answer is you're always criticizing while you're coaching. At least training sessions wise. In games, not so much. At least for me. In training sessions, I'm always criticizing throughout, but it's a minute level. It's more like taking notes in your head for you to reflect on later. And so you're always picking up little pieces like, hey, I should have done that. You're in a drill and like, hey, I should have started the ball from there instead of here and then at the moment I know why, but so you kind of take a little mental note in your head like, hey, I should switch that. And then once the session's over and you have some time to reflect, now you start, hey, if I had moved that ball, it would have made it more of this game realistic situation for them, which now changes their triggers. It would have made for a more smooth play. Maybe you're getting more reps in, whatever the reasoning is. You can dive deeper into later, but you have to take notes throughout your session of what's going to be better. And it's complicated to go through that process.
Before you got into the position that you are in now, coaching Southeast Community College men's for the 2024 season, from the spring into the fall, you coached different levels. One particular level that you haven't mentioned yet is the Division III level at Nebraska Wesleyan. Yeah. Compare now that you have a full year of junior college, playing against other junior colleges at the higher levels, and I believe NAIAs as well. Did you play any NAIAs in preseason? No.
Yeah, we played York University.
York. compare the levels of Division III soccer here and junior college.
Yeah, I mean, it's always going to be a spectrum. Like, the middle of junior college is very different from the top and very different from the bottom. I would say that the Division III level is lower than a lot of JUCOs, just because of the strains on them. The rules on Division III is very strenuous for coaches to have to work with. But no, you two take top half of JUCOs, and they can they're competing at a higher level than at least in my experience, many of the D3s. I mean, you probably take the top the national 25 D3s, and you're probably talking a little bit of a different story. Like, it's always scaled like that, but in general, that I would say that's kind of how it is.
I asked that because there's someone wondering whether they should take the opportunity to go to junior college, despite even the junior college rule, which I've been talking about a lot. Despite that rule, taking that step to play at junior college level, they're questioning, okay, should I do this? It's not always the seen as the best option because it's frowned upon almost sometimes.
That stigma that's there.
Yeah, and then there's Division III where finding scholarship money can be difficult. What do you say to that player that's trying to balance those two options before making a decision?
Well, I mean, what's kind of your initial reaction to that?
Playing junior college?
Yeah, what would your initial reaction be if it was for someone bringing that up?
Oh, you see, this is why I can't answer my own questions. But junior college. I mean, besides the junior college rule of getting back eligibility, which makes it almost a no-brainer to go JUCO, besides that, I think junior college is like, look, you're here to move on. You can experience a team that has the mentality of moving on, not staying to get to know you, not staying to be a friend. Coaches not staying to get to actually know you as a player. You're here to win because that helps you move on, and that can be the environment that you see more often than an environment that is friendly. Just to say a simple word, friendly.
Yeah.
I saw that too my first and second year, where we just decided, I thought, this is a team atmosphere, but everyone's already talking. We got into the first session. Let's just, we're looking to move on to this school, that school. Now that I moved on to a different school, everyone's talking about, okay, we're looking to win, and we're looking to graduate. Hopefully, if everything goes well, we're looking to graduate. We're not looking to go anywhere. There are obviously some players that want to go other places, keep transferring, higher level. But in junior college, everyone needs to move on. And if they don't, most of the time, and it's hard to say, their playing career ends there. It can end after 2 years. I hope that what I just said resonates with a lot of players, because you're in a time where you're recruiting players to come to junior college.
Yeah. And
some of them, from what I saw, don't fully understand the idea of junior college. They get there and like, okay, I'm gonna play. No, you're going to school, whatever. But you're doing this all the time, and eventually you need to put things in place to move on. My second question to you is that, how, with these players that are going to move on, how have you been able to help these players move on to different levels and be able to invite that environment that, okay, I'm going to develop you now, we can do well, that helps you and the team? How have you been able to invite that idea of, I'm going to help you to move on to a different level as a player?
Yeah. So the core of everything you just talked about, I think, you nailed pretty much every point, and the core of it is the mentality. First of all, to answer your first question, in terms of JUCO and D3, it's mentality. The mentality is the simple answer. The mentality of the players and the team is, from most teams, is very different because of all those reasons. And then you look at how I approached it with my guys in my first official fall season. I did it very poorly. And looking back, I think that was a root of a large of my problems, because that was, I expected the maturity of players to be at a different level. at least the players that I recruited, and talking about those things, and I didn't go about it the right way at all. And so that's something I definitely do not have down at this point, but it changed my recruiting for this next season quite a bit, and really diving deep into the recruits, talking about the mentalities and talking about these things. And, like I had a recruit in my office with his mother yesterday, and once they left, I made a joke to my assistant coach that for this list, there's 30 minutes that I talked in there, and all I did was talk about mentality. All I did was talk about that you're going to come in, you're going to expect to play. You're going to come in and you're going to expect this, you're going to expect this. And it's like, you have to throw all those expectations out the window. You have to build yourself a process of, this is what I'm going to do to help myself succeed. This is what my workout routine is going to be. This is how I'm going to live my day-to-day life. And I'm going to come in ready to compete, and ready to earn those chances, because there's a lot of opportunities in JUCO. But they all have to be earned. And there's all those reasons that you mentioned. So it's really digging deep to these recruits. It is the mentality you have to have. Now it's a matter of, do they already have the mentality with the skill? Do they have the skill and I need to teach them the mentality? Do they have the mentality and I need to teach the skill? And so that's where you start to balance, and that's where everybody's squads differ. And trying to find that right balance. So this will be, my first recruiting class album that I'll get to see how that worked out, Those tests, those results are incoming for sure.
And I'm sure you're excited though. You're excited.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. The one thing also is that looking at your resume now, for anybody, I'm looking at your resume. I don't need to look at your resume. I only need to look at it for background information. But you are 23 and you have a resume arguably that does not look like most 23-year-olds.
Yeah.
So you've coached at Division III level. You've coached club level here in Nebraska. You've moved on to coaching junior college level men's, which can be difficult. Then you
coached high school as well.
High school soccer as well. And then you started to move into what players' perspective would be as summer league, summer ball. First two teams, technically, would that be AFC, Omaha? And now, most recently, West Texas.
Yeah. Semi-pro is, if you're taking one step at a time in terms of the grinding upwards, semi-pro is that next step. That was not something I completely expected. I stopped club coaching after my fall season got over with the intent of, I need to nail down, really focus on Southeast. I know other things I want to focus on, I want to grow. And an opportunity kind of just presented itself with West Texas. Shot in a resume. Had a phone call about an hour, and we just talked footy, and so it got me really excited, and it's a great opportunity with a phenomenal team in the NPSL. And that was about a week and a half later. He's like, "Yeah, you want the job?" I was like, "Sweet, let's do it." And so there's a whole different area you could dive deep into that, and then and I saw AFC pop up in social media, start posting their trainings, and I'm like, wow, this is the best semi-pro scene I've seen here in Nebraska. There's several teams, and I've talked to those coaches before. I've been to some of their game sessions, and it is what it is. Different areas of the country have different levels, and this team seemed legit. So I sent a message in, "Hey, you looking for any staff?" Got back to me a while later, after I'd already taken the West Texas job, and come on board. So got a call from the coach, talked for an hour. Next morning, I was there at the session, and that it just goes from there. So that just tells you part of it is those conversations that you have to be knowledgeable, and you have to as a head coach, you want someone you can work with well as your assistant. It was just naturally that those just kind of popped up, and I'm like, hey, that's a good opportunity to learn. And then now it's kind of full send, and it's taken up a large part of my life.
That's good, man. It's a lot of tiers that you've been a part of, a lot of teams, a lot of individuals, a lot of faces, a lot of connections. And I speak about this probably with every guest, how important is networking and keeping contact,
Everything, man. Yeah. Everything. And you get told that when you're young, and you don't really listen. You just kind of ignore it,
Yeah.
whatever it is. But it's everything. Like the human side of everyday life is so important. And so just like now that I treat it, it's not networking for networking purposes most of the time. I mean, sometimes obviously you're trying to get that connection to like have that opportunity, whatever it is. But really, if you're just truly authentic and like you enjoy, like I enjoy talking to somebody about footy. I mean, that's really so that, if somebody else enjoys that, like, and then you just start to mesh well and start to branch out, and you stay in touch.
Yeah.
How many coaching licenses, how many coaches have helped me out past that and still stay in connection, like D1 coaches, guys that are coaching at MLS Next Academies that I was with for 2 or 3 days, and we just chat about footy from time to time. And all of a sudden then they're like, hey, you want this job? And it's like, oh wow, like he's still thinking about that. Or hey, do you got any players for me here at this D1 school? And it's like, oh wow, like that's just stuff that kind of happens. You don't do it for that purpose. You just connect with people, and you just enjoy talking about what you're talking about. But it's extremely important.
Definitely.
Yeah.
There are kids and there are players who are listening, especially because of you and your title as a coach now. They're listening and to hear what the behind the scenes of coaching and what coaches think of, especially someone who's been a player not too recently ago. They, I would hope, are appreciative of what you had to say, because I am. And you taught me a lot of what you've experienced in coaching already and as a player, and your background and what has happened to you, how that's built you into the person you are now. And I couldn't be any more grateful to get you today, because I know how much the logistics of trying to organize this conversation, and I'm thankful that it did happen. So Eli, thank you, appreciate everything.
Man, I appreciate you, Jody. It's a great time. There's some of those questions. It's a lot to think about, and the way you phrase certain questions also, like you makes someone think better. So like that's I really enjoyed being here. We made it work. I mean, it's all we're all good.
Thank you, man. That's it.